Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast. Our primary objective is to motivate and inspire our listeners to never quit. The reality of life is simple. We all fall. We all fail. At times, we get knocked down. The question is, do we get back up? Are we stronger? Are we better prepared to attain the maximum of our potential? Thank you for joining our No Quit tribe. As you go for your greatness today, never quit. And remember, we rise by lifting others up. Welcome to episode number 366 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is being present. Our quote of the day comes to us from Jim Elliott. Wherever you are, be all there. If you are looking to support our new Team No Quit apparel line, head on over to positivitytribemerch.com and you can grab yourself either a sweatshirt or a shirt. Once again, that is positivitytribemerch.com. One of my very good friends, Brian Kane, introduced me to today's guest, and I'm glad he did. I had such a fun time speaking with Andrew Baxter, and I think you'll appreciate a bunch of what he has to say today. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Andrew, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Hey, thanks, Chris. I really appreciate you having me on. I'm super excited.
It's an honor, and you came via a good friend of ours, Brian Kane. So anybody that Brian Kane introduces, there's a lot of pressure, so no pressure on you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
First question we ask everybody is, are you ready to positively impact at least one person today?
Absolutely. We have a saying around our program, and I got this from my brother, actually. Happy Friday. So happy Friday, Chris.
Happy Friday. I love it. I think there's no better way to start a Friday than a podcast interview. And as we talked offline, the whole premise of our show is to motivate and inspire people to never give up. And I was curious if you yourself have a no-quit story or perhaps a challenging time where you could have given up or given in, but you didn't.
Totally. Yeah, I have a couple. I actually I've spoken about this a couple times, but I don't think everyone knows about this in my story. When I was coaching out at Ohio State that was 2008 to 2012. I had gotten married in 2007 or 8, moved out to Columbus, and my wife and I started a family. And I think there were a number of factors that went into the decision, but I actually ended up, and it was funny. I was listening to one of your other podcasts. He was talking about telling a quitting story, basically. It's one of your more recent ones. And so that made me think of this story as well, that I ended up quitting my job at Ohio State. Great job. My wife had a great job out there. And I just wasn't sure, again, number of factors that went into the decision. We had just started a family and there was a number of things that kind of went into the decision, but I ended up quitting that job, not knowing what I was going to do next. Kind of jumped into this unknown phase of my life, and thank God I had my wife on board with it, and but it was terrifying and scary, but I just knew that at that point in my life, I couldn't be living where I was and doing the things that I was doing, and just needed to change some of those variables. So I think by quitting, I realized that was okay to quit in order to really find happiness in my life.
I think it's interesting that you touch on that, because the whole concept, obviously, of quitting or not quitting. But to your point, it's stopping one area or ending one area for the next. So I think it leads to that. And maybe a follow-up question to that is, what was your next move after that once you left Ohio State?
Yeah, so I took some time off just to kind of think about what I needed to do and what was important in my life. And we had just started a family out there. So obviously family became even more at the forefront of my priorities, and just wanted to do what was best for my family. And I knew that I couldn't support my wife and my kid at the time in the mental state that I was, and just wasn't sure, what I wanted to do, whether that was continuing college coaching or find a new job or I just felt like I needed a break. So I took some time to kind of think about that and had a few things going on. I got some calls from some of my colleagues, coaches that were in need of assistance. And I turned a handful down just because I wasn't sure I wanted to coach. And then ended up taking a call from Andy Shea at Yale, who had been a friend of mine for a long time. And we connected on kind of a different wavelength, I think, than I had connected with anyone else before. And kind of rejuvenated my interest in coaching again, and took a visit out there, and went back east, and it just fit, I think, for a number of different reasons for me and my family, that taking that job again and having a different outlook on priorities and life, and developing more of a work-life balance for myself, I think was huge. So I took some time. I was fortunate. We had some time where my wife was finishing up her job, and I had a full summer of putting my little one on the back of the bike and doing some time to reflect about what I wanted to do next. So it was actually it worked out well.
Speaking of reflection, going back to mentioning Brian Kane, he's somebody that has been a mentor and a good friend in my life, also a personal coach. And I know you've worked with him with your program, but he was the one that really introduced the idea and the concept of reflection to me. And I think as males in this college sports world, I think we are always go, go, go. I just had Steve Wojciechowski, the former Duke player and coach, on, and he was talking a lot about how when he was let go from his head coaching job at Marquette, it was the first time in many years, if not ever, where he really took some time away. And I think it's so important to actually reflect on where you are. And I know personally, I don't think I've done enough of it in the past, and I've tried to make a conscious effort moving forward to really spend some time almost every day when I can to reflect on just all different facets of my life.
Yep, absolutely. It's a great exercise. I know one of the things that we use from Coach Kane is the well, better, how exercise, right? And we use that, on a weekly basis with our team. I do it with my family as well at home at dinner. Try to do it at least once a week. And it's a great exercise to go through on an individual basis to reflect on the things that you did well, maybe during the week, or if you want to do it daily, things you did well, things you want to do better, and then how you're going to, do those things better, and how you're going to have, what's your plan, so obviously I think it's very applicable to the athletic realm in sports, right? Because it's pretty black and white from a wins and loss perspective. Hey, we did these things well, we need to work on these things. And then I think that the big key there is the how, coming up with that plan and finding a way to act on what you want to do better.
I love that exercise that Brian talks about, the well, better, how. And I think it's in no way identical, but it's similar to something else he talks about. And I'm sure you've probably done some of this work with him, but the start, stop, and continue perspective. So I think when you look at, what you did well, what you can do better, and how are you going to change it, or how are you going to tweak it moving forward, I think it's a natural almost parlay to that start, stop, and continue. And I think it goes back to just the reflection piece of looking at those areas that you're doing well, maybe those areas that you're falling short with. But then also, I think from the reflection point of view, it's what are those things that maybe I'd like to try, or maybe we'd like to begin looking at, whether that's personally, professionally, in the sports world, or just for yourself individual.
Yep. Absolutely. It's another great exercise that we use that as well sometimes. It's good to think about things that, you want to continue in your life. And it goes back to habits. I'm in, the athletic realm again. And we've spent a lot of time this fall working on our guys' habits and making sure that they're developing good habits, whether it's, time management or taking care of their bodies, studying, all those things, so I think, the start, stop, continue is definitely applicable to the, developing good habits and figuring out which ones work for you and which ones don't. And ultimately, becoming better.
No, I think that's so important. For our listeners who maybe are not familiar with you, wanted to ask if you wouldn't mind just briefly sharing who you are and what you do, because obviously I have that inside information and maybe some of them don't.
Yeah, sure. So currently I'm the head men's lacrosse coach here at Fairfield University. I've been coaching Division I lacrosse, NCAA lacrosse for, I think this is my 23rd year. Um, Played the Division III level, and I got super fortunate right out of college. I got a Division I opportunity. Um, and I've had stops at Colgate University, Drexel University, Ohio State, Yale, and now Fairfield. So I was an assistant for 18 years, I believe, or 19 years, and this is my 4th year now as the head coach here at Fairfield. So been very, like I said, fortunate to have great mentors, great guys that I've worked with, and then obviously some incredible student athletes that I've been fortunate enough to work with, and it's been great. Been able to establish incredible relationships along the way.
Fairfield Stags.
That's it.
Question I know is coming because you've listened to some episodes. If you had to define yourself, but you could only pick one word, what word would you pick?
So I think I would go with authenticity or authentic. I feel like I talk to my athletes and my players about this all the time, about just being yourself, and I think it's super important to be okay with being yourself and showing yourself love, so I try to model that as best as I can, and just be who I am, and let that shine through, and so I try to be as authentic as I can.
I think that's such a powerful word, and especially with student athletes today, I believe the importance and the value of being who you are, and really trying to maximize that as opposed to following others or trying to be, in essence, somebody else. I think, yes, you can emulate other people's success or attributes, but it's really truly leaning into who you are. You touched on a minute about habits that you've been working on your players with for this fall, and I was curious if you yourself have a morning routine that you swear by.
I am currently, I have had one in the past. I don't have one that I swear by necessarily. I know you and I were talking off air earlier. I'm in the process of still kind of developing that for myself, to be 100% transparent. I don't have one. We practice in the mornings in the fall, which makes it a little easier for me. So I get up, relatively early, and I'm able to, make myself breakfast and get my vitamins and do all that stuff, and then get ready for practice, do a little prep before we get going. So I kind of have a natural rhythm and routine to my day based on our practice schedule, if that makes sense. But nothing crazy from me, Chris, in terms of a morning routine that's gonna, make waves anywhere, I don't think.
I loved how you were transparent about the schedule at the fall and how you guys practice in the morning. And having worked with a couple college teams now, also a couple college lacrosse teams, the fall is very different, obviously, from the spring after the new year, when you're in essence really getting into the season. But I think the one thing that I've found, and I know so many of our guests have touched on in some way, is that your morning routines change over time. For example, when you're a 22, 23, 24-year-old right out of college, you have different priorities. Then when you get married, when you're starting a new job, those type of things. And I think for me, as and why I asked this question, a little bit selfish for myself, but also the listeners. But the reality is, so many times in life, you have to have those different morning routines where maybe at one point you can spend 15 or 20 minutes in the morning for yourself, and maybe at another point it's 60 minutes or 90 minutes. And that's just the difference of I think kind of how life throws things at you. And then I'm sure you would agree, being an assistant or a graduate assistant is very different than being a head coach, as far as just responsibilities and some of the ways in which your time needs to be spent.
Yep, absolutely. No, it's huge. And I think, the big thing that I've worked with on our team here, and personally I've worked on a lot, is just being present, and I think that goes into the routines like you're talking about. I think, if you can take a little bit of time for yourself, whether that's in the morning or at night or both, in order to clear your mind so that when the time comes for you to be with loved ones or your team or your whatever role you are or what you're doing that day, so you can be completely present in that moment, and I think that's why I do believe in like I said, I don't have a hard fast routine right now, but I do believe in establishing some sort of rhythm and routine to your day so that you can take time for yourself in order to be present and get the most out of your time when you are with others.
Yeah, and I think being present is one of those things that we all know about, but there's so many times when, whether it's phone, whether it's getting interrupted, whether it's thinking about other things that are coming down the road, it's so difficult and challenging to really and truly be present. I'm sure you've heard of the idea or the concept where people say, be where your feet are. So whether that's family, at work, so many times people spend, their time when they're with their family thinking about work or thinking about other things. And then when they're at work, they're thinking about their family, and it's so much easier said than done. But I think, that idea and the concept of the flow state is when you're really hitting on all levels, is when you're really truly doing or being where you should be, and putting that in that parameters of, okay, I'll deal with this later, but for the next half hour or hour, I'll be here.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think another, maybe my favorite Canerisms, I guess you call it, that we got from Coach Kane is be present, not perfect. So we actually put that up in our locker room right when you walk in our locker room this year here at Fairfield. I have it on my wall over here on my whiteboard. And tell the guys on the team this all the time. It's like, hey, we're never going to ask for perfection, but we're going to ask for presence, because it's your greatest gift to your teammates or your family or whoever you're with at that point, So I think it's a huge message for anyone, I think it's seeking perfection is impossible in my opinion, and I think, or not seeking perfection, I guess perfection itself might be impossible. Seeking it is okay. Obviously we're all trying to get better here in what we do, but I think being okay with not being perfect, I guess maybe is a better way to phrase it. And just working on, being where you are, whether you're a teammate for those 2 hours, or you're on the phone with your mom, be the best son you can, or be the best friend when you're with your friends, or best husband, or best, because everyone has different roles that they play throughout the day, right? And different people that rely on them. Another thing we talk about in our program is you're a leader if anyone is relying on you, right? So like having that in mind and giving that the people that you're with your utmost attention and just being present is, like I said, I think the best gift you can give people. So
I love both of those, and again, we're if we send this to Brian, he'll probably get a big head. But I love that concept of be present, not perfect. I watched a video from Les Brown within the last week, and he's on stage and he says, and he's talking to a pretty large audience, and he says, practice makes, and everyone screams out, perfect. He's like, let me say it again, practice makes. And he's like, perfect. And he's like, that is completely, and everyone's getting all excited, and he says, wrong. And I think, I laughed, but so many of us think about or try to be perfect. And if you look at the best teams in any sport, if you look at the best businesses, companies, entrepreneurs, parents, nobody is quote unquote perfect, but it's practice for me makes improvement. And I think when you focus on becoming better, when you focus on learning, you focus on growing, I think ultimately you 100% become better. But I think so many of us, it's been ingrained in us since we were little, practice makes perfect. And it's funny that we're having this conversation, because I remember just the idea when I was out shooting hoops, and, it's like you think about practice, about being perfect. But the reality is nobody's perfect, but it's how do you get better when you fall short or you miss. And I think for me, so many of those people that I've looked up to in life are the ones that are so far from perfect, but they continue to make those significant improvements along the way.
Totally. I think it's talk to the guys here all the time, or my players about this all the time. It's you practice and you lift and you put, all your effort into these things so that at the end of the day, regardless of wins and losses or playing time, that you want to walk away from every experience you have without regretting not doing that. Right. Because, that's the only thing that you might, regret, I guess, is not going all in on something. If you're doing it, go all in, and I think the hard part, I think, is the fear of the unknown. And I have this conversation with a lot of my players here is them trying to take that jump into going all in on, Fairfield Lacrosse for me or whatever it might be for someone else, but like going all in on that and knowing the whole time that there's the unknown. Like I might do this and I still might not be playing. We still might not win games. We still might not win those championships. I still might not get stronger. But I think that's just all part of, like you said, getting better and not having those regrets.
I love that you use that word regret because, we've been taught, obviously, and with going with that, practice makes perfect, is, no regrets. I have no regrets. But I think take it one step further for me is when you go all in with whatever that is, and if you do fall short or you come up short, not that it makes it better and feels great, but I think the difference is if and you can look in that quote unquote accountability mirror and say, okay, yes, we lost today, or I wasn't a great dad, but I gave my best effort and I did my best. It kind of takes the sting a little bit down, but again, it goes back to that concept and idea of just getting better versus trying to be perfect all the time.
Absolutely. Yep. Agree 100%.
So I have to ask, are you a reader? And if so, is there anything that you've read recently or perhaps you're currently reading that you'd like to recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. So we just did a book as a team that I thought was incredible. So for anyone who's watched the movie 300, there's a book that we just read as a team called The Gates of Fire. And it covers the title says an epic novel of the Battle of Thermopylae. So it's the Spartans of Greece defending their country against the Persians. And the book goes into a lot of the Spartan culture and talks about their the way that they lived and kind of their view on selflessness, I guess. And so for us here at Fairfield, one of our core principles is selfless commitment. So we tied that into our core principles here with the book and used the Spartans as an example of that and some of the things that they did to protect each other in war. And just their overall mindset was truly incredible. So I definitely recommend it. It's a pretty cool read, especially for people that are history buffs that would really enjoy this. But awesome book.
That's awesome. I'm gonna pick your brain probably offline here, just because I love that concept when teams, whether it's high school or college, actually will read a book together, because I think there's so many really neat things that happen from that. I know you have listened to a couple episodes because we spoke offline, so I'm going to hit you with the famous Jim Rohn quote, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." So if I could grant you dinner with any 5 people, dead or alive, that you could level up with, who are you picking?
So I did take some notes, Chris. So I only wrote down 4, so I need to find a 5th. But my list is Thich Nhat Hanh, who just recently passed. He was a Buddhist monk. Roger Federer, Phil Jackson, and my grandfather Ray Bergmaster, who's on my mother's side. And then, like I said, I couldn't come up with a 5th, but so that's my 4. I've got obviously a couple. I got a coach and an athlete in there. I've got a family, former family member in there, and I got a guy who's helped me with my mindfulness in my life. So I feel like that would be an incredible dinner.
I think that I'm going to offer myself to be the fifth just because I would probably like to listen to some of those conversations. I'd be curious to see if Phil Jackson and Federer would actually click. I think they would, but definitely two incredibly successful, but very, very different individuals. So I think, and it's a fun question because obviously there's no right or wrong answer, and I have no idea. Usually, even if I know the people that I'm interviewing really well, sometimes they'll go family, sometimes they'll go, fictitious, which is always interesting. So I appreciate you touching on that. So we're going to now switch over to our hot seat questions. And as you know, the only request we have of you is you spit out the first thing that comes to mind. Last meal, you can pick absolutely anything. What do you pick?
Buffalo wings.
Favorite smell?
Buffalo wings.
That is the first time we've had a back-to-back answer. Yeah. Other than lacrosse, what is your second favorite sport?
Disc golf. Does that count?
That does count.
Okay, perfect.
Do you have an all-time favorite team?
You know what? I was thinking about that one. It's funny. What's funny about me is, so I've become the longer I've coached, the less actually kind of other sports I really follow, which is like opposite, I feel like, of maybe a lot of people. I've tried to consume a lot less as I've gotten older, and like to our conversation before about just being present in my life in terms of, so for me, it's like my Fairfield lacrosse and my family. So I honestly watch way less sports than I ever have. And I've kind of gotten away from being a fan of teams, if that makes sense. So it's tough. I don't know. I don't think I do.
Good. We stumped you. All-time favorite movie?
Seven.
Oh, good flick. Do you have a favorite book?
All the Pretty Horses by Cormac McCarthy.
What's your favorite app you use on your phone?
UDisc. It's a disc golf app.
What's the background picture on your phone?
Right now, no picture. Just blank black screen with red military time on it.
All right. Do you have a favorite quote?
It is, "I never lose, I either win or learn," from Nelson Mandela.
That's a fantastic quote. And what is that one song, no matter whenever, wherever you hear it, morning, evening, afternoon, you automatically turn it up and rock out to it?
Carry the Zero by Built to Spill.
I love it. So for our listeners who want to follow you or find out more about you and or your program, what's the best way for them to do so? And are you active on social media?
So fairfieldstags.com is our athletic website. You can find all the information about our lacrosse team, tickets, roster, schedule, all that stuff. And then I am not active on social media. I have some accounts, but again, I'm trying to, one of the greatest things I did probably right around when I got the job here 4 years ago is I deleted all my social media off my phone. So I'm not active. I have accounts. I'm out there. I'll check it on my computer to keep up with recruiting and some stuff at Fairfield, but I don't tweet. I don't post. I very, very minimal.
I think you just became my hero because that's something that I've been talking about doing a lot less of. And I think that's one of those things that is so much easier said than done.
Yeah, it's been great. And it goes back to, I think, I was finding myself obviously like not being present at times where I needed to be present if I was on my phone and I'm scrolling through Twitter or anything else. And, I've still found some vices on there, like whether it's YouTube once in a while or things like that. But I think for the most part, the Twitter and the Instagram are gone, and I'm not, listening to anyone telling me who I need to recruit or what I should be watching or listening to. So I'm trying to formulate my own decisions.
Consume less. And last question we have for you is the same question we ask everybody, is if you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners today.
Yeah, I think maybe probably the greatest thing that I've learned over my 44 years here is just to be yourself. Going back to the authenticity, word and thing we were talking about earlier. And then I think the other thing, so twofold, Chris, sorry here. So be yourself and show compassion for others. I think is something that I have learned as I've gotten older, that everyone, needs compassion in their life, because we don't know. There's another great quote from Abraham Lincoln that I love is he said, "I hate that man. I must not know him well enough." So I think those are two things that I think people could probably do more of, in my opinion.
I love that Abraham Lincoln quote, and I think I'm gonna botch it because I don't know it by heart. But there's another one where it says something about when you make your enemies your friends, and I think the compassion piece is so important. So I have to say thank you for being on the show. I truly, truly appreciate your time, and I hope that we can connect again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Chris, for having me on. I really appreciate it, and great meeting you, and excited to catch up again.
Thank you for listening to episode number 366. Andrew shared a bunch of great information on today's episode. I hope you take what he shared to heart. In his parting words, Andrew left us with 2 points. Number 1, just be yourself. And number 2, show compassion to others. Let's all show compassion to others. As we have said numerous times on various podcasts, you never know what someone else might be dealing with, and your compassion to them could make all the difference. And remember, we rise by lifting others up. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.